Good evening, everyone. I know budget's kind of a bit of a boring topic, and it's never one that you think, great, I can't wait to sit through a budget conversation. However, it's the one section on grant applications that most people get wrong. And it's not rocket science, but it's just good to understand how to get that balance right. I was listening to Harriet's conversation earlier in the week, and just to give some further thought on that, I would always suggest that with grant writing you keep a folder on your laptop with all your grant information. Whether you're a grant writer that's been doing it for years or whether you're just new at the game, it can take time and you go in and out of lots of grant applications. So if you can keep all your letters of support, all your different partnerships that you know of, any statistics, strategies, as much as that's a horrible word, but anything that's supporting evidence to what you're claiming for, it's great to keep it there, and that way you can tap into even past applications so that you're not rewriting every time. It can get very tiresome. So any way that you can make that a little easier. Now, budgets, getting the budget right. There's only two columns in a budget: income and, of course, expenditure. I guess what we need to look at with the income and expenditure, grants often have what they call a ratio funding. Often, I believe, in arts grants you can ask for the entire amount, but there are many grants that want you to contribute something. Now, I'll go further on what in-kind something means, but if you don't value your project enough to either put yourself in kind or some resources, why should the funder value your project? So think of it, why, if I'm in a very competitive situation, what would the funder see in my project or what my ask is for that I can stand above the crowd? Ratio funding means $1 for $1. Sometimes it might be 3 to 1, which means you put in $1 and they give you $3. And even if there's no budgetary ask, then you should be looking at the in-kind contribution, of which I'll explain a bit later. So let's keep it pretty simple. This is what a budget will look like: cash income and cash out. So any time that you can, the cash income will be things like grants, and the cash expenditure will be something like paint and materials. In kind is who's going to be doing various activities within your project and what will they be doing. So let me explain that a little further. Let's show us the money. When you're requesting money from the funder, you want to look at your entire project and everything that you think you might need. And then you're going to be thinking of what contribution your group can add to that. Can your group, when you get together with all your fundraising activities, what donations, maybe a philanthropic organisation or a patron or somebody else that may be donating something towards your efforts? Your auction nights, charity nights, all those things are considered income, and any other grants that you might be going for. The interesting thing with other grants, people sometimes think they don't want to say that they're applying for money with a different organisation, as if it might kick you out the door. It's not the case most times. Most times, if you can expand on the income and make the project bigger, you are considered more of a exciting project, if I can want for a better word. If I can say that I've got $100 to put towards something and I get another $1,000 from the Torquay Community Enterprise, I now have $1,100, and then I could ask from the funder for another $1,100. Now I have $2,200 towards my project. And then the funder sees that you've got a partnership and that your project has been supported by another organisation, and that makes you attractive. So always think about where you can partner, what grant you might be able to get first and secure, and then go for a larger grant on top of that to add more income. I hope that makes sense. Write down some notes so you can ask me afterwards. So let's have a look at the sources of income. Your group's organisation and you're contributing $100. Maybe the Historic Society or Arts, Surf Coast Arts, or your aunt gave you some money, and you've made all these beautiful canvases and you're going to have a showing, have an exhibition. You're going to charge everyone $10 to come for the night, so you're assuming that you're going to make around $1,000. Then you might run a raffle and collect donations. Then, like I said, any other successful grants that you might have procured, and then what money you want from the organisation that you're going for. This is just to give you a bit of an idea. There's a whole range of things that of income, and I'll leave you to have a think of those. When you look at this, this gentleman, okay, so he's decided he's going to do a street art. When he's gone to go to a funder and asked for money for his street art, there's more than just buying the paints and applying his work to the wall. As you can see, the far off, there's some tape there that's stopping people from going through. Now that's a volunteer, that's in kind. That's somebody that's standing there to stop people walking through, to disturb him. Then there's the wall. Who owns the wall? Have you applied for any permits? Are those permits going to cost you anything? Are there any approvals from other, the council and the like? They're going to cost you. So it's very important before you apply for any funding that you've really thought out all the costs that you might have. If you're going to a publisher, how long it would take to do the reading of all your work. And sorry, I'm not an artist. I'm sure you know what I'm trying to go for there. But anything that you need to get this project up and going, think of all and everything that you might need and how much income you're going to need. Are you going to be spreading the word on social media? Will you be paying for the social media? Where, how are you going to market what you're about to do in your project? Are you going to have an opening night? Are you going to have catering? Are you going to celebrate all those people that worked in kind for you? What is it really going to cost? Volunteers, in kind, everything. In kind is a word that says anything and everything that contributes to your project, initiative, artwork, novel that you're writing, anything and everything that people do for you that you don't hand over cash and pay for. That is considered in kind. When you've put in kind in an application, there's two ways to look at it. In kind to a funder is in a way considered cash. We see it as the entire project, because if you've got $1,000 worth of income and you have 10 people working for $10 an hour, that is another $1,000 worth of income. We don't see it as cash, we see it as in kind, but the project is now twice the size. You can't deliver your project without these free in-kind contributions. So it's important to show the funder what that looks like in its entirety, so they fully get a concept of how expensive it is to do what you're doing. Who is the in-kind? Let's say for the art trail, it's going to cost us $450 of in-kind, so that's not cash, but it feels like cash if we were really paying for them. And how I would work that out is I've got 3 volunteers selling tickets or manning the door for 5 hours at $30 an hour. So I come up with the figure of $450. If you've got 100 hours of reading a manuscript at $10 an hour, that's $1,000 of in-kind. The only time you don't show in-kind is if it's not needed for the money that you're wanting to get. You don't really need to show them the full cost of the project. And how I could describe that is, because in that budget, you're showing income in two ways. You're showing the real cash income and you're showing people income. So when I go to acquit that grant, I have to show what cash I've spent and what in-kind people I have used. So you must keep a record of everything that you said that you were going to use as far as people or volunteers or any type of free contribution. You must keep a tally of that, keep receipt of everything so that you can acquit on that at the end, because they like to know. At the moment, I just looked this up, the ABS data says that a volunteer is worth $41, almost $43 an hour. So the Shire doesn't see it like that. We only say it's $30 an hour, which is the Victorian state government pricing. That is worth a phone call to your funder to start with, to say to them, are you interested in how much in kind I'm contributing to the project? If so, what is the hourly rate of in kind? There are two descriptions for in kind, and that is a standard rate of around $30, and then you have a professional rate. So if you were using somebody that would normally charge $150 an hour, you can say in your in kind that if you use them for 3 hours, that attributed to $450 worth to your project. Please check with the funder before going ahead to put that in, because all of them have their own rules around in kind. So what did you spend your money on, and where did it all go? It's very important. You get very excited and you're going ahead and you're going to put this project together, that you understand where all your expenses went at the end of it. The funder wants to know, where did you spend our money and how did you spend it? So as small as the receipts as possible, keep everything in that desktop, in that folder, whether it be petrol that you have to drive somewhere, whether it be food, whether it was just the volunteers that you used, the paints, there's all sorts of things you can think of. Please remember to keep each and every receipt, because at the end it's really hard to track it backwards and you will wonder where you spent it. And if it's a large organisation, they can audit your project, which is just like a tax agent. They will want to see everything. So expenses might be the lighting, if you're doing a theatre production, as simple as the safety tape on the wall art. Canvas and framing if you're doing some exhibitions, props for plays, art supplies, social media and marketing, costume design, all those that you need to keep a tally of, plus all your in-kind hours. A question a lot of people ask is, when you start putting your budget together, let's face it, it's a bit of a guesstimate. Some things you will be able to get a quote for. You're going to rent a microphone, you're going to rent some security personnel, or hire security personnel. All of those things that you can get a quote for, you will know the price. There are, however, income and expenses that change as a result of more income or less, and more expenses or less. There are two things you need to remember here. If your project changes any from the application you submitted, you must ring your funder and explain to them, it's what they call the scope. The scope of your project has slightly changed. You might need to decrease it because you didn't get quite the amount of money you thought you were going to get. Or it could be that just because the building burnt down, you've got to now change everything to another location and things have changed. Call the funder and keep them part of your project all the way along. Anytime you're having monetary problems or problems with delivering what you said, if you keep your funder informed, they're far more likely to be kind to you at the end of it when you're acquitting, and they will support you through that. You can't change things just because it seemed like the right thing to do and keep your funder in the dark. You must call them and let them know and get an association with them. So there's two things you need to do with your funder. At the very beginning, you call them, you run your project past them, see if it's something that they're interested in funding. You check on the in-kind, if it's important to add that, what the cost of the in-kind is, and then who that you can talk to throughout the project once successful. I also think it's a really good time to ring up the funder and talk about a range of things. Find something on the application that maybe doesn't quite make sense, that gives you a reason to give them a chat, and then ask them who's been successful on previous applications or previous projects. If you can call them, or lots of them are already published on the internet, find as many successful applications as you can and start reading them and get a gist of what they put in their costings, in their budget, and how they write their applications. You learn a whole lot from people who have already done it. So what does it look like? This is basically what it looks like. So up the top there, they're hoping to get a grant from the Surfco Shire. The ask is $1,500. You'll see there that there's a drop-down box. A lot of them are using online portals now, which makes it a lot easier to fill in your application. Then it says Community Bank. Of course, they're using the Bendigo as an example here. Was it confirmed? Yes, I've received 500. And I've got cash donations from a patron, a friend, a donation, a raffle I ran before I did the project. Then down the bottom, you'll see the in-kind. They're saying that the event management is 10 hours at $30. They're going to use an accountant at the end to tally up everything for them. And then administration is all what it takes to run a project. That's what you call administration. Your time, your friends' time, people who rang up to get everyone to your event, people who handed out posters. Anything and everything is administration in that sense. Then I'll cross onto the expenses. You'll see that this particular program had volunteer training. So what they had to pay out of their pocket for the volunteers, what they had to pay for venue hire, and pay for catering. Everything that you paid for, you put in your expense column. Down the bottom is the in-kind. The in-kind must match and the expense must match. Don't start putting things in that if you've got $3,100 in your income, you must tally it up to be the same on the other side. So if your expenses were more, that's bad luck. Or if your in-kind was more, you don't put it down. You put down what you have spent to the amount of money or in-kind that you put in the right-hand column. No more, no less. They must total the same. This is the one that people get wrong all the time. If you didn't spend as much as you said you were going to spend, then on the donations or the in-kind on the income side, you can reduce that so that the two tally. We just want to know how much money you had and how you spent it to equal. That's it really on the whole budget thing. It's not rocket science, but it is knowing that you must put down all the various forms of income that you think you're going to get to start with, and then you must put down all the income that you did get, and then how you spent it on the other side, and they should tally up. I can go to questions, but just before I do, a few of you might be interested now that the COVID-19 Recovery Assistant Grant Program has been released at Council. That program sits with me and another one of my colleagues called Terry Hannon in Community. So I'm just going to give you a little brief snapshot. A few of you may have received some information in your emails today. The grant is based on 9 guiding principles on the back of the fire recovery, the emergency recovery programs. And these 9 principles are need, that what is the need in the community? What is the need we are addressing? Why do we need what you're going to do? Then the other principle is time, that it doesn't have to be quick. We know that things can take time, and some programs are not a short response time, they're a long time. Then the next guiding principle is strengths-based. That means how are we utilising the strengths we already have within our community? We know that we've got some really, really talented people that are already working on some fabulous projects. And so we want to improve the skills and the strengths within our community to further that. Then the next guiding principle is, sorry, I'll just turn my paper here, helping us recover. So the grants are specifically looking at how we're going to recover from this COVID pandemic. We want to understand what the benefits are, and that's where things like data, strategies, not anecdotal evidence, but real evidence. How can you show that this will really benefit our community? How are you going to deliver it? Which is if you don't have the skills, you saw back on that last slide, if you don't have the skills, you might need to ask a friend who is an accountant or bookkeeper to do that, and that would be in kind. But we'd like to see in any project that the people that are going to be running this project are skilled enough to deliver it. And we want it to be local, everyone that needs to be in the Surf Coast and for the Surf Coast. And equity is the final principle, so that it's for disadvantaged and for disability as well, so that it's equal opportunity for all. So looking at the screen here, that's the community eligibility criteria that builds strength for our community. It has a broad range of benefits. As I mentioned before, enhances the leadership, improves our health and wellbeing, which is fantastic. I love that part, and it's for our mental health, and also supports a creative response. So that's for all of you out there on this webinar tonight around being creative, that we do understand that the need for artistic element, and people love the arts, and it will definitely help us to recover. The business side, there's a range of these things here because as a tourist destination, we do look at encouraging people to stay longer while they're here. We want people to spend money locally. We want to hire local people. And we want our sectors that we have, which are predominantly accommodation, entrepreneurs, hospitality, and the arts to recover. So I'll leave that on the screen for you to have a bit of a read through. There you go. Questions? It's pretty dry budgets, and I didn't want to keep it going forever tonight, but I hope that I've given a bit of a snapshot, and I really encourage you to ask me questions because I will be able to help you get your head around a few of those things. What I'll do is I'll take that back to that question, that slide, in case there's any questions.
Gretchen, there was it's Stacey back again.
Stacey.
Natalie asked a while ago, and I was looking away from the screen when she actually asked this, but she says, do you do this process of informing them of the change when they are considering your application or after it's been awarded? So that must be in relation to when you've changed something about your original application.
After it's been awarded. Once they will award you on what, if it's going to change beforehand, you need to let the funder know, because it's no longer an application that might be valid. However, once an application is awarded and you've been successful, that's the time before you sign an agreement of any type. It is much easier to change the scope of your grant with the funder and tweak it before the agreement is signed. Once an agreement is signed, it's far harder to get your own way and change anything. So yes, definitely do it before you sign an agreement. But in between, get awarded before you sign the agreement.
Sorry, is it possible to follow up one point on that?
Yeah.
So for example, if you apply for a project to like ABC 3 organisations, each for a portion of the funding, and at time of application you've put, obviously you apply to B and C and they're under consideration, and obviously it's the same situation with the others. When you apply to B, you said A and C are under consideration, and if you do have a bad news, one of them has been unsuccessful and the others are still under consideration, by informing people that point, would that sort of kind of impact you? Am I making any sense?
Yes, no, I totally understand what you're talking about. Yes, because it's unconfirmed, the funder may come back to you and say, have you got confirmation of that funding yet? And if you were to say, no, you haven't, the next question they will most likely ask is, in the scope of your project, what can you do without if you don't get that money? So how would you reduce the size of the project that you submitted in order to stay within the amount that they gave you? So if I think of something like we're doing a playground, and if I missed out on the $5,000, then I would not put one extra seesaw in. I'd only do the 3 seesaws, not 4.
So it's like a contingency plan.
Yeah, it's like, what the best case scenario, we want to do this. If we didn't get all the money, we could still deliver the project, but at a smaller scale. Go ahead and ask me more, though, if that didn't make sense. I'm happy to keep talking.
Was that okay, Natalie?
Yes, that's brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No worries. We had another question. When you're starting and have no experience in grant applications, where do you recommend I start? Are there resources, books, websites that I can use? And thank you so much for a lovely presentation.
Oh, I'm not an artist. I was trying to make it look a bit colourful. Look, the best place to start is there's an online community called Our Community, and I think it costs you about $25 a year for membership, and they will send you 400 grants that are available every month that's out there across Australia. So then in your search button, you'd put it down to look at the arts grants or just the things that matter to you, but it's called Our Community. And that's a fantastic resource. They have so many tools on there about writing grants, budgets, grant seeking. I think it's worth the money. The other thing I would do is, as I mentioned before, look up, Google successful grants in arts or this or that, and most funders will publish successful grant rounds and then who was successful. And I just ring some of those people up. If you could like Google them and say, would you be willing to have a chat with me on how you got your grant? The grant world it's fantastic. People share all sorts of things. I ring people up and they'll give me the grant they got that was successful, because they've already got their money and they're more than happy to share their success with you. So don't be nervous to ask all and sundry, and read lots of applications, successful ones.
Yeah, and she's also asked, do we actually have any examples of good grant applications, like that we can maybe provide everyone, like something that was maybe successful?
Yeah, okay, let's have a little looky-loo at some, and we can't publish somebody else's grant without their permission, but we can certainly ask, you know, because it's their intellectual property if they've applied for a funding grant. But we can certainly figure something out, Stacey, and put together some tips and tricks around that. I'm sure.
I wonder if we could redact something enough to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You know, what a good budget looks like. What a good. I've got a good cheat sheet, and I didn't think to bring it to this because I was on budgets, but it's around the words that are really good to use in an application and how you relate those to what you're doing. So I can do that.
Yeah.
I've sort of been doing this grant stuff for a long, long time, and it's the other thing I could say to you is understanding, and Harriet touched on this on her presentation, is sometimes the funders ask you to do so much for so little. So figure out, is it worth me applying for this grant, or is it going to be a noose and I don't want to do it, because it would have been much easier not to bother with $1,000.
Yeah, be picky.
Yeah, some funders are good and some are crap.
Molly asked, would you recommend in the budget to allow for any changes? So, for example, if you need to spend $100 to hire someone for a job, but you say $200 on the grant application just in case the actual price to hire them changes. Said, I know you have to show the actual total expenditure after the project, but is there a way, if you are uncertain before the grant is approved, to put in that amount?
Yeah, okay. So you're putting in a contingency amount. And you could say that you could put on your application 10% contingency and you call it that. A lot of grants will allow for that, and you could say to the funder, do you allow contingency, because there's an unknown quantity, and more than likely they will say yes at a percentage. So,
And Natalie's asked another question. For funders that are not clear on their website about how long before they can get back to you with a decision, when's the appropriate time to chase up?
Yeah, you can chase up, and
do it
you just go through.
Yeah,
you just go through the program person. They'll put you through, and you say, "Oh, who's doing the program for the arts, whatever it might be called?" And you'll get through, and you just say to them, "Do you have any closer indication of when the assessments will be finalised? When will be notified?" You're within your rights to ask that, absolutely. If they don't give that to you, boy. And often, I deal all the time, I write grants for state and federal government. Like, we, as a local council, we get our money from state and federal government to do our programs. And I'm often on the phone going, you guys, when are we going to find out about this? And they go, oh, I know, Gretchen, it's been forever, and it's sitting with the minister, and we're hoping to know by the end of next month. And I go, oh, okay, thanks for that. We're desperate to get this project going. They're people like you and I.
Yeah, and it might actually shuffle something along. You never know.
Yeah.
Danny's asked specifically about the COVID grants that you mentioned, Gretchen. She said there are possibilities for art projects in those COVID grants, and I would say yes, definitely, if you can match the requirements of those.
There is a definite element for the artistic grants in this. It's not, though, for one artist. These grants, because they are a response grant to the COVID situation, you must team up with a group of artists to run something that will benefit the community, to help elevate themselves, make some money. It doesn't have to just be about mental health. It can be literally about making money to help survive. That's a business sector one, and we'd love to hear about that. We won't be giving money, though, to one business to support one artist.
Yeah. Now, well, I know Danny is on the committee of the Surf Coast Art Space, so she may be.
We're very excited to see some art projects come in. So get together with a bunch of you and put your heads together. I can tell you with the grants is that the round is open. That doesn't mean we're going to the first 20 that come in, we're going to give the money and that's it, and the money's going to be gone. We want to see some really good thought out projects. We want to work with you to scope the projects well, and each month we will be taking them up to council for their approval. If the grant is below $5,000, the officers, there'll be subject matter experts within council and management. We will decide, and the money will go out quicker than getting council approval. But any projects over any ask of over $5,000, your project could be $10,000, but if you're asking for $5,000 from council, the council laws have to approve it.
And as Harriet said the other day, please use the resources that are available to you, like get in touch with Harriet and Gretchen if you have any questions about your own projects, and if you think they might meet the requirements of each of those grants, because that's what we're here for.
With the have a good long chat with Harriet, that lots of different officers within the Shire. You must, however, though, the eligibility means you must talk to myself or to Terry before submitting an application. And the reason behind that is it's like anything with an artistic expression, and grants are no different. People interpret them information differently, and so just so that everyone is understanding clearly, it's been left with two main officers, myself and Terry, to finalise before you can submit. But you certainly can talk to a range of officers in order to scope up the project first.
Is there a closing date for that grant, Gretchen?
No, next year.
Right.
Maybe, however long it takes us. It's $1 million. It sounds like a lot of money, but it won't take long to spend it. But that means that there'll be a range of short, smaller grants and short timeline grants, and then some bigger projects that take a lot longer. And each month we will have not a closing date, but a date that we shut off a certain number of applications to take them forward to council, and then the next month the ones that have come in, we'll take those up to council.
Fantastic. Natalie, you shared a couple of websites and I guess Twitter feeds that have featured applications that have been successful. So I've taken a copy of those and I'll send them out with the notes to everyone.
Thanks, Natalie.
Yeah, in the next couple of days. So that's great. Natalie's actually based in England, so we've really got some people from far and wide with some of these workshops. So it's been great. And
and we'll send that link to our community too, because even though that's a slight fee, even if a few friends share, like one person bought it, and you can all have a look at the newsletter that comes out or whatever.
Great.
We even pay for that at council. I think you might. Do you receive it, Stacey? I've got nine officers receive the newsletter, which we're not allowed to share, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'd send it out to everyone. But it's part of their copyright. They have to pay for it.
And does anyone have any more questions for Gretchen? What time is it? 8:15. We're doing great.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad I was sort of legible then. Thanks, everybody. You can go back to your wine or your cup of tea or whatever program's on the telly. Thanks for taking the time out to have a look. And I'm very approachable, so anytime anyone has something that they need to wrap their head around, I'm a public servant at the end of the day, and I'm here to help my community. So if you want to ask a grant question anytime, feel free to give me a call.
Fantastic, Gretchen. So yes, now that you know Gretchen's face, you can certainly get in touch with her, and you certainly know Harriet. So yeah, come and chat with both of them about any proposals you might have or any questions you might have about grant applications process. Is there, someone said, is there a list of grant applications that are available in a year on a single website? I wish that was the case, but I don't think it is. You did mention...
The reason there isn't, Stacey, is a lot of grants are often quick quick turnaround grants. Sometimes organisations have some money that they all of a sudden know that they can send out, and so you'll get a report that this grant is closing within 3 weeks, and that's why it's even more important to have that folder on your desktop with everything that you might ever need to write a grant, and so that your support letters are at the ready, your manuscripts that you've done before, or artwork, everything that you might want for writing grants, that you keep in one particular spot so that you can pull it out of, and quickly turn it around.
A has asked, how do we get contact details? And I'm assuming she means the contact details of Gretchen and Terry and Harriet. Now I'm sure your contact details are attached to that, to the grant itself, listed on the Surf Coast Shire website. Is that right?
Yes, that is. Yeah.
But we'll send those out. I'll make sure I send that out with the email that has Gretchen's notes with it. So I'll send everyone's emails and telephone numbers. So yeah, and Phoebe Flower said, epic Gretchen, thank you. It can be bamboozling. And it can be, but hopefully it's been clarified for you tonight. So yeah, so thanks again, Gretchen, for that.
You're welcome. No worries.
Thank you everyone for coming along tonight. Yeah, so that concludes our Elevate workshops for June. So thank you everyone for coming along, and a special thanks again to Gretchen and all of our workshop hosts this month. As I said, the videos will be up on the surfcoastartstrail.com.au website within the next week or two, so you can go back and review them and share them with anybody, any other creatives that you know who may have missed out on some of the workshops during June. So thanks a lot everybody, and yeah, we'll say good night.